To welcome every one of you. Those of you we are meeting for the first time, I'm glad to meet you today. I see we have Joy Chakwita, we have Miriam Karisa. I'm so glad to have you people. Miriam, how are you today? I look forward to this conversation because it is a very, very vital one for that. Yes, it is a very vital conversation. Without further ado, I want to begin with you, Joy. Now, Joy, if I could briefly get a detail of who Joy is for all of us to, know her a little bit. Joy Chakwita is an immigration lawyer and social worker in the UK. Joy, I want to welcome you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. My name is Joy Chakwita. I'm in London. I'm an immigration lawyer for the last just over 16 years. And for the last 5 years, I've also been a social worker. And I work with Surrey County Council with children who are looked after. It is an honor to be with you here today. I hope you're going to enjoy this discussion. Thank you.
We're looking at these mental challenges, and you people are in the diaspora. I can only imagine the magnitude of the mental issues we have to a daily: stress, depression, to mention but a few. Joy, let me start with you. In the UK, and you have been there for a while. Uh, what stories have you encountered? Let's start from there. What stories have you encountered of people's challenges mentally? Let's start from there, and then we move into a point of how can we help each other. But let's start from, what are the biggest challenges, mental challenges, that people in the diaspora, face?
Thank you very much, Lynn. So we start with immigration itself. Because when you are in the UK and your immigration is not yet sorted, you are going to be very stressed because everything goes around your immigration status. You cannot work, you cannot go to uni, even right now, you cannot even rent without having a visa. So most people don't have visas. And if they don't, even when they have visa, maybe it's limited leave to remain. So you're always worried about your visa. Will they extend it? Will I win this appeal? And of course, the visa fees, are just up there. So most people in the diaspora, our Ugandans, are always worried about their visa, and that affects their emotional well-being and how they function in the community. And of course, then we talk about isolation, because of course we're in a foreign country, and I'm lucky I have my family here, but some people find themselves here on their own. And those people are usually going to be isolated because they don't have anybody who knows them or who they know that they are going to talk to. And it's so difficult to start relationships. Like when you start, mixing with new communities, people from different backgrounds, all those things impact on people's emotional, well-being in this country. And, a good example of that is when we had COVID. And then we had lockdown. And then, for some families, we had bubbles. And then for some other Ugandans who didn't have families here, they really found themselves so lonely. So all these things impact, our people in the diaspora. And then we also have the problem of accommodation. Accommodation is very expensive in this country, even for people who are working in very good jobs. And even for those who are working, they really want to get to the property ladder, and it's not that easy. So I think accommodation is a problem. And even when people get accommodation, there's overcrowding as well. And when we get things like the pandemic, it really hits hard those people who are overcrowded in their houses or in the communities where they're all packed most of the time. So we get that poverty almost, if you like. And we also have our own culture, which can also be a challenge. Say, for example, when we talk about mental health, you imagine that people should be able to talk about it. Then it's not always culture. sometimes that says you shouldn't talk about certain things. So, for example, the depression or issues that they cannot sort out on their own, to find the strength to talk about these things, even with health professionals. We see this even in our social work roles, when we meet, especially men from Africa, when they have been going through challenges and they haven't talked to any professional about it because they think you just have to deal with it like a man. We also have domestic violence, which is quite common in most of our communities because, like say, for example, you were brought to the UK by a husband who is sponsoring you at the same time for your immigration purposes in this country. So when you come here, they tend to everything that you do, including your money and how you spend it, and keep, threatening you, saying, "Oh, if you do this, I'm not going to, to support your application next time when you're applying, or I will deport you." That's the word actually some Ugandans use, like "I'll." But what I can tell you, I don't know whether you want me to address everything as we go along, because there are solutions for all these challenges. There are solutions that our people just need to know. For example, if you're stuck in an abusive relationship or marriage just because your immigration depends on that relationship, you can actually leave that relationship and still get your visa sorted, because the immigration rules provide, for leave to remain for those people who are victims of domestic violence. So you need to go and talk to your GP, talk to your boss at work, and talk to a friend, and even report the police if it means that. And then, that can be evidence that you're a victim of domestic violence, and you'll be able to get your status and get out of that relationship, which is affecting your emotional well-being or your mental health, if you like. So we also talk about the long hours that our people work, because not very many people are like in really very professional jobs, or what they call sometimes white-collar jobs. So they tend to work long hours and very many shifts because they need to support our families back home or relatives, and they are getting so little such that they need to get from one shift to another. Now, when that happens, definitely you have neglected yourself because you don't get a time to rest or to social, attend to yourself, act on your mental health and resilience as well. When you've been working very many hours and say, God forbid, you get COVID, you are really going to have very bad, impact of that, because the body is already is not strong because it's just been working around the clock. I just feel like I'm talking to myself, Lynn. Does somebody want to come in for now?
It's all right. It's okay. Joy, we wanted to get a starting point, and you have really ushered us into it. So I think we can all share our stories. I'm sure everybody has had an encounter with a mental challenge. As much as mental issues are often called that African people, we are in denial. We do not allow ourselves to feel mentally challenged, depression, stress, any kind of mental want to run away. And it is the commonest. It is the leading cause. I'm reading here that depression is the leading cause of mental illness across Uganda, and it is even worse worldwide. Joy has already highlighted, but I want to ask you, Miriam, any challenges you've encountered, mentally, and don't get it wrong. Let's not be African with this, because we all have mental challenges in a way or the other.
Yes.
Depression. Yes.
You've started right on hitting on that very point, the point of stigma. It's we Ugandans or Africans, there is a lot of stigma surrounding mental health. We feel we are not supposed to be sick, or either we don't even understand it. We don't understand there is mental illness and how it manifests itself and how we can prevent it. So it is quite a challenge for most of us as Ugandans, as Africans, even to reach out for help when you feel like stress, anxiety, we see it as a weakness. We see it as if failing to or the stigma issue, either it's due to lack of awareness, it could be me personally or any other person I know, because we even don't know how some symptoms manifest, how some, like say, how does depression come in? How do you know you need help? How do you know this is a medical, or this is something you need to talk to a counselor, or I mean something you can solve on your own? When should you be seeing a medical expert on whatever you're going through? Is it normal stress? Is it now a medical issue? Has it gone beyond the usual? Because we normally have stress in our daily work, in our daily lives. It could be a relationship, it could be work related, could be studies or whatever. But the problem with us in diaspora, as Joy has highlighted, it seems like we have too much, and we don't have the social circle which you usually meet, like when you are in Uganda. In Uganda, you have your family surrounding you, you have your friends around, and you can share, you can talk to them. But here, in most cases, you find you're alone. Even if you have friends, they are not so close to you. Like you could share everything, even intimate details of whatever you're going through. So that makes you holding whatever it is, the stress. It could be due to grief. Actually, the biggest challenge with Ugandans in diaspora is grieving, because we do grieving from a distance in most cases. When you're in Uganda, you know, you grieve when you lose a relative or a friend. You are going to join the funeral, you're going to talk about it, you're going to share with friends, you're going to mourn properly as we are used to. But here when you lose someone, it's through a phone call, and that's it. And you go back to work as if everything is normal, yet you're breaking down, yet you are hurting, and you have nobody to share with your pain. You feel like there is that lack of closure, and it goes on and on. Tomorrow you lose someone else, and another day you lose someone else. I was recently talking to a friend who said, she's a professor, and she said, I've lost 5 aunties and I've not buried any. I feel like they are talking in my head every night. You know, in traditional and culturally, you know, you feel like if you don't do the funeral services or the funeral rites and put that closure, as if there is some incompleteness there that you need to fulfill, and that goes on. So she had really, but for her, she had like a privilege to ask for leave and go and do funeral rites. But there are people who can have that privilege. Maybe your job requires you to be there like 24/7, like you are not high up in position. That pain stays in you, and sometimes you don't talk about it. Okay, but you're not okay, and in future it manifests into something bigger, like and all that. So the life in diaspora, the loneliness, the stressful, like Joy highlighted, working many hours and you don't have like the social interactions to relieve the stress. And then the financial demands, the life is a bit more hectic than what we are used to back in Uganda. So all those things pile up and really create a lot of stress and mental breakdown in some cases. And then to worsen it all, we still don't know how to address it. Who do you go to? Who do you talk to? And when do you do it? At what time in your life? Like the stage. What? Is it okay? Have your stress gone to another level that you need medical intervention, or it's something you can handle on your own? Francis, can you share your story with mental health? What is your experience?
Thank you, Miriam and Joy, for this opportunity for us to discuss quite an interesting topic. Though, because it has been said in Africa, we seem to not quite either understand the topic we hide away or shy away, because what I know back home, once you talk of mental health, what immediately comes in people's minds is Butavika Hospital, and then you are completely off. So without maybe segmenting it, you talked about an idea of not knowing, and for me, I think that where things are, there is need to invest a lot as our country in as far as mental health is concerned. Generally, like even having these people who provide these services, even at school level, from primary and so on and so forth. Because sometimes, you know, back home, we normally talk about how teenagers behave or juvenile delinquency. All those could be starting points for issues related to health. I'm a teacher by profession, and I have handled children as low as nursery school, and I know what they would go through. And I said I used to have a one-on-one with these children, but I would discover a lot that is going on in their lives, and then we do something. So back to our experience, or my experience in the diaspora. Yes, Miriam, you put it correctly that the change of environment itself is stress, or it brings a lot of anxiety and so on. Then once we are in these foreign lands, of course, there is conflict in culture. You are learning the culture, but remember, for young children, they integrate in very fast. With the old people, it becomes hard, and then you have those struggles. Then for us who are, you talked about the work environment. I agree. Yeah, it is work, pay bills. Sometimes at the end of the day, you ask yourself, am I working for paying bills? Then when it comes to back home, you are failing to attend social functions. Even those that you attend, you are seeing they are stressing you in terms of what is your contribution towards those social functions. And then it is made worse, like even when you try to make an investment back home, either you are cheated by your own relatives, or you are cheated by the system that is back home. I will give an example. We all must have had some of the people who have been either maliciously arrested on arrival at the airport, and then you find that they are manipulated by the corrupt people, either in police, and even what they have been saving on the account taken. So such allegations, the government should also come in. They add on to the stress, because for us, we get that information. You say, oh, such and such happened to my friend. So when I go back home, will this happen? Also, that compounds the stress. Then some of us who are in politics and mindful of Uganda that we call home, when you see a lot of things that are taking place there, those also compound to the stress. You hear this happened, and so on. I'll give an example. In a hard how link bus has been killing or involved in accidents time, and then you ask, like, nothing is done. If a person comes, oh, I think there should be discipline. But some of us who have had relatives who have perished there, that one you keep, that itself becomes a stressing factor. So I believe there is a lot, but most important is, I would even say that even when we say that, like, the situation back home, we say that, okay, we can have as many service providers as possible, but the environment under which they may work, they may also be mentally sick. and mentally sick people are going to treat other mentally sick people. So you can imagine what would happen. Some of us, we are talking about, I would also be here, like what I go through. I can call home and talk to maybe to a mental doctor from home, but if they themselves are also stressed, you may not get results that you need. And yet here where we are, you know, when we are in a foreign country, you say, okay, let me suffer, let them press me if there are things that are stressing you. You say, but at home I shall go back home. But if you have no hope that even the home where you are anticipating to go to is on fire, it becomes more and more dangerous to our lives, because like as Miriam said, here we have nobody to talk to. Like as how, you know, we Africans, we solve our problems by talking to somebody, by your family being there to support you, or friends. Whereas here in these developed countries, you are on your own. If it is your problem, it is yours. Those who can cry, they go and cry. For us, the only way we can do it may be go out, take a walk in the woods and so on, even when you don't know where you are going. So I think there should be mechanisms that on top of thinking on how much is the diaspora or how much people are going through back home, we need this field to intensify it and really we ensure that it is something that is taken care of. You may find that even other simple diseases, when a disease finds a body that is already weak mentally, the disease itself may be able to overrun you. Like I have always had relatives, I'm not feeling well and so on, go to the hospital. The doctors said they are not finding anything. And then I say, okay, how can you be sick and there is nothing? Maybe in one way or another, it could be a stress somewhere that is leading to that. For sure, we need to look into that. If we all agree that our mental or our brains are the engine for all what our bodies will be doing. Thank you.
All right, sorry. Thank you very much, Francis. We have throughout this month so far, I have encountered several conversations around mental health, and it is still taboo, like Miriam already said, and also Francis, you've also highlighted. Why is mental health or its health? Why is it still taboo? And especially people in the diaspora, now that you have these challenges around you, which we understand, how do you go about the situation? How do you manage? Because you need to talk to somebody and you have to pay money, for example, for a counselor. You might also not know. Do we start with ourselves, appreciating that mental health is a problem? First of all, if I'm stressed for a week, can I agree that that is a mental problem going on? I need to find a way to distress. If I'm depressed, can I know that this is depression? How do we go about these occurrences if they happen? How do we go about? Joy, I want to start with you. How do we go?
Thank you.
How do I tell, for example, and stop being in denial? How can one be run out of being in denial that, I'm depressed, but man, I cannot allow to be depressed. I'm not supposed to be depressed. This is not something I need to do. How do we start with ourselves, appreciating that we have mental challenges?
Thank you very much, Lynn. Thank you, Francis, as well, for explaining those points as well. I'm a systemic practitioner, and I can tell you that sometimes people have to be told that you are struggling, because you keep pushing themselves until we them stop. I think you're struggling. We get situations where a manager can tell someone out, but realize it because they think you just keep going. And you mentioned about taboo with asylum children, as unaccompanied asylum seekers. When these young people come, they've been exposed to a lot of trauma, in their countries and also en route to the UK. And then they get all these nightmares and they can't eat, they have no appetite, they can't focus, but they don't think they need to talk through things. They need to talk to somebody. And a young boy, for example, from Iraq will tell you, we don't talk about things. These are too personal. And a man from Uganda, it's women who go talking about how they feel, you see, because it's about talking about your feelings. Now, our culture does not encourage men to share their feelings, even if they love feelings. They think it shouldn't just go talking about feelings. Feelings are for women. They think it's a weak thing. Mental health awareness, and we actually have like a whole month for mental health awareness. We learn by talking about it, by highlighting it. It's on TV. Maybe you've heard about our princes, Prince Harry and Prince William. They have been champions, of this. But when we get situations when people jump, into the, under the tree, committing suicide and turning to alcohol and drugs because they can no longer manage. The question was, how are we going to deal with this? By talking about it, they can know that actually it is not law and it's normal to tell other people how you feel. In systemic practice, we believe that when you talk about somebody actually plays back the story back to you, and maybe you get a better narrative. Because sometimes when you're in the deep, you can't even see the cup in front of you because you are stuck. Somebody can actually highlight your strengths when you are in deep and say, actually, you know what, you can do it. And sometimes we give hugs, and sometimes you just want somebody to listen to you. So you can say, I'm not alone who is feeling like this. Because when you talk to professionals, they will tell you actually, they validate your feelings and they say it is normal to feel like that sometimes. But then when you feel that it's normal, you feel better about yourself. Because when you're feeling like that in a bad situation, you think you're the only person who is experiencing it, and can be quite embarrassing. For example, my sister Miriam talked about, like when you lose somebody and you can't even go to grieve together. We know that in bereavement, when you need people around you, but when you are all by yourself, in fact, we even have telephone lines, like for bereavement. If you've lost somebody, you want to talk to somebody, there is a number that you can call. And some people don't think they need to make that call and talk to someone because they're like, oh, it's for men. It is normal that when they lose somebody, they actually go through that process of bereavement and the support is available. So it's about us having these little communities where we can reach out to each other. 2 weeks ago, I was invited by the Islamic community. They were celebrating their Eid. We have a very strong, connected Islamic community. When somebody is sick, they come together. When somebody loses somebody, they even buy the ticket to give that person the chance to go home and attend the burial. So this is what we are championing at the moment in London, to say you need a small group such that, they don't just find a body after 5 days and nobody has even, checked on you. We are trying to tell our people, reach out, make time and socialize is part of, our mental well-being, your mental health, if you like. So for me, I think that by talking about it, by telling our people it's normal, it's okay to share feelings, talk about things, and help is available. Help is available. That's what some people don't understand, that help is available. I gave an example of somebody in an abusive relationship, or in a marriage, or maybe it's a visa. They fear that, oh my God, if I leave, I'm going to become illegal, or they're going to deport me, or all kinds of things. Even at work, you can make a complaint. You can talk about it. For example, if somebody is being rescued and you really feel that person is treating you like that because of who you are, you can't change who you are. But there are avenues for addressing these kind of things, because we get people getting like real panic, mental meltdown because of that kind of environment at work, which is targeting them because of their race. And again, talking about culture, we get, other people who are from the LGBT community. Now, these are some of the things that they don't talk about, even in the UK, in our communities, but we all know they're happening. And then before you realize, somebody commits suicide because they couldn't talk about it. That guess what? Maybe I think I belong to the LGBT community, but support is available. And I love this kind of, this kind of discussions. It's like a voice to the community to say, it's okay to feel like that, but there is always help available.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Joy, for that. We have noticed that the 2 years so far of COVID, almost 3 now, have exacerbated the challenges. Mental health actually have finally, beg your pardon, realized that mental health is actually a huge problem. And it took COVID for many people, for especially families, to appreciate that there are challenges, that this is actually a mental problem. We have lost loved ones. It's a pandemic. We have no solution. A vaccine is coming, and people are noticing that, wow, we are in trouble. And they don't know how to address this. So COVID, opened our eyes to what mental health challenges really, really, really mean. Miriam, how while COVID went on those 2 years, you encountered a few, mental challenges here and there. How did you personally deal with these challenges? And did you encounter other people, Ugandans especially, in your neighborhood, in your community, who went through these problems? And how did you sit down, for example, and talk about these things? Did you make calls to each other to talk about these things? Because it starts from there. I feel like it starts from a point of, well, there's all this, we need to talk about it, but how do we move? How did you manage that? And if it ever happened right now, do you think you can move forward and say, okay, we are going to create?
COVID situation was indeed very tough, and we barely managed. Sometimes you even ask yourself, how did I go through this? Because it was like a new situation for everyone, including the mental experts, the health practitioners, everybody. It was something shocking, and we had to learn as we moved on. But it was challenging and very, very stressful. Working situations. Sometimes there were people who were not able to work at home. So you have to work in a situation where you could be infected anytime and you can't stop working. So the stress was real. And actually, yeah, like you said, that was the very moment for everyone to realize that mental breakdown is real, and it can happen to anybody. My biggest fear, I personally, was, am I going to die in this foreign land? I don't know how other people feared that, but everybody that was praying to God. I was like, it shouldn't happen. And am I the first people to run out to get the vaccine, because I thought even if it helps like a little bit, a smaller percentage, let me do it. But the biggest fear is, if you are going to be sick, who's going to look out for you? There is something like you explained, being in a foreign land and being alone. I mean, you have a circle of friends, but in most cases, you still feel alone because people are there for you, but they're also busy and trying with their own challenges, or the closest person next to you is a few distances away, and is another state, is another area, and is also going to be struggling with their work that they can barely talk to you. Then the time differences, like at what time do you talk? And even if the phone calls are there and the systems are there, then there is a disconnect. I remember my church was open. I mean, we have a lot of counseling services. It's a real great community. And I belong to the choir. So I'm so active in the church, and they are so close to me. But because of the cultural differences, I could explain some things I'm going through, and they wouldn't understand. They are trying to reach out, but they can't reach out to me. They communicate the way they handle things, the way they see them, the way they understand them. But we still have like a cultural barrier that we don't understand each other. And that was a big challenge to me. Sometimes you have to say, okay, let me just deal with this, because even if I share, nobody will understand me. You can't try to explain like you're stressed about your family back in Uganda. Someone who has never had a family away from them doesn't understand how that feels like. Okay, they professionally try to communicate and give you advice, but the advice doesn't actually like touch your problem. I don't know how I can explain that. So that's a big challenge to the migrant community. Even when you're grieving and you those services enjoy about, I remember I lost my brother and I was trying to like us. It was like, I mean, they understand grieving in their own way, not my way. So still that leaves you like a gap. You are not satisfied. You talk to someone and you feel like they are not even understanding you. Why should you even talk? And at one point you stop talking. And so that's a big challenge. And I really don't know how we can. Maybe we need to encourage, as a way forward, encourage the most immigrants. For instance, if Joy is a counselor and she's from Uganda, I can run to her because I know she will understand me so well. Or even if it's someone from Kenya, Africa, and they are a counselor, they would understand my situation better. Some American counselor whom I will first of all try to explain how I'm feeling like this, then explain how that situation feels to me because of my cultural background and everything. So that that cultural barrier is a very, very big challenge when it comes to the service provision and the help you might get for mental illness. And secondly, we have our superstitions and how do we treat mental illness? How does mental illness manifest to us as Africans? Most of us, we think we are being cursed. We are, maybe there is an auntie you annoyed before you boarded the plane and they are cursing you. That's why you are stressed. And family curses, maybe it's witchcraft. We believe into a lot of things and which would be mental health issues, but we interpret them to be some maybe curses, witchcraft, spiritual attack. I mean, all that stuff, and we miss out going to the people who would help us, that would help. And we run around into all those issues. I was reading in a report where it says that 80% of people who seek medical help in Uganda, 80% of them start from a traditional healer. Then others, even away from the 80%, address mental health as a issue. So they would go to church, not to seek counseling, but maybe to exorcise a ghost or something. So that gap, the misunderstanding, the ignorance. So by the time you realize you have a mental sickness, or this is depression, or this is another case, or Alzheimer's or whatever, and it could have been prevented or maybe treated before it got worse. By the time you seek that medical intervention, sometimes it's too late and you miss out on the much help you needed. So those things are there with us. And there is something else I wanted to share. Maybe someone who would be listening and you're going through the same, you would relate. Going through school in abroad, especially when you started school in Uganda, is not easy. It's a totally different environment and it easily causes mental breakdown. You are introduced into a new world. You're trying to grapple with culture, the cultural differences. So you are dealing with culture shock. At this time, you are trying to introduce yourself, to be introduced to a new, different education system, a new way of studying and so the whole situation, and then you don't have time. I mean, if you have come to join the semester, they don't give you a gap to really get acclimatized to the environment. You are already pushed into the system and they expect some result. So you are dealing with all that and it comes like a mental storm into you. Like you you really try so hard to deal with that. And I've talked to some people. I also remember I had a friend from Uganda who was put on a dean's suicidal list. She was almost committing suicide because she couldn't handle. She's an adult. She's someone who even understood that she was going into a stressful situation, but there is no solution. You want to study, you don't want to miss your scholarship, or you have paid a lot of money, you don't want to miss out. So you can't take that much needed break. And then you have the pressure to perform. And it was so hard. It's usually so hard to the students studying abroad, to the international students. So that is a very big gap into medical. And you know, you are new, you don't even know where to seek help from the counselors. And sometimes you even fear, sometimes you feel you don't need it. Maybe it's you who is weak. You know, we are brought up to understand that if you are not coping up, then it's your weakness as a person, and you must pull up and try to perform to the expected standard. So you don't seek help. You think you can go through it, but it's a really, really big challenge. And I thought I should share about it so that in case someone experiences it, they know they need to seek some help. It's a big challenge and you shouldn't sit on it.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for that. Joy, I see your hand up. Please unmute.
Yeah, Miriam, thank you so much. You just got me following everything that you were saying. And while you were talking about like students, of mental health or breakdown, I just actually, even for the very educated jobs, they fear to go to their doctor because to go down on their medical records. Now, if you have mental health, you know, on your medical records, you may struggle to get promotions, like for certain jobs. So you would have shot yourself actually, you know, in the leg if you go to a doctor and it goes down on record, actually you have mental health breakdowns, because they would consider to be unstable and they can be quite patronizing work, even when you think they're being helpful. They're being patronizing by saying, oh, I know you can't manage that kind of work, that level of stress. So they wouldn't actually give you those opportunities that stretch you because they think they're protecting you, but actually you're missing out on opportunities. So it's a two-edged sword where you can say, should I just run in there and get the help, or should I use methods? Like, say, for example, if you have a friend you talk to, you can actually find that you are stabilizing your stress because you have that safe space where you can reflect and think about things, and somebody validates your feelings. So these are the kind of challenges again.
Francis, May being a mental awareness month, this month's theme is mental health for making mental health a nationality. Francis, first of all, the stereotypes, the superstitions, the Africanness of mental illness, health issues, a national priority. Francis, in your thinking and what you have encountered and what we keep hearing, we have 14 million, and these are the ones who have actually gone to hospital and reported cases, and actually they have mental challenges. There are those that go unreported. Do we have reached a point, yes, where we can actually at a national level understand what mental health is and treat it as a pandemic of its own?
Thank you, Lynn. For elaborating again about this mental health. Like as we have like the study that came out on the number of people be back home and have mental health, I would say generally almost all of us, I would say even globally, the whole population has mental issues, but the degree at which they manifest or the degree at which somebody has the capacity to stand that. I was reading one day, I think it was last week, an article by Claire saying that globally more than 70% of the people with mental ill health receive no treatment from any health care staff. And I tend to agree with that, given the explanation that Joy has given and Miriam. And like as I had said again, I would emphasize that it is important that we wake up and we begin addressing some of these challenges, most especially when it comes to the African perspective and back home. Like as I have said, for me, some of the stressing things that I go through, they originate from Uganda. Yeah, I'm not saying some of them here. Yes, I know I can go to a counselor, and Joy has put it clearly. Generally, there is a situation that happened to me here because of that stigma that is associated, and then it goes on your record. Like you become a victim. I was struggling with paying tuition, but at the same time, I was supposedly to work and raise that tuition. And I think the professor realized that I'm going through this hardship, and they wanted me to go and see the counselor, but little knowing the counselor is the one who needed to be counseled by me. So it was a real challenge, but that's how tough sometimes it can be. I do accept that for sure you find that we have lack of knowledge, but it is important for me, I would say, back home, like for example in Uganda, and Joy and Miriam, they have talked about it. Having mental health practitioners, even up to village level. Like you talked about COVID situation we went through, but for sure, how many people have come up to talk about that situation leading to mental health? The very few perhaps, but then what are we doing about it? The only thing that these things came out, maybe at family level, a parent got an opportunity to sit at home with his children, with his wife, maybe the wife with his husband, and they even have each of every person from time to time. Otherwise, we teachers, we handle the behaviors of your children. You remain with them for a few hours and so on. So all this comes up. For me, Lynn, I still believe that there should be extensive knowledge exposure from the grassroots level, from the primary unit of the nation. And people, it becomes a conversation that people are aware of. Two, Joy talked about the stigma that comes with it. Then we fight that, because if you are going to hold me accountable, that because I had ever expressed I will call it a mental breakdown because of I could not handle a given situation, and then that should continue on my record, then it may not hold. I still remember when I was in Uganda, one day I went to a hospital and I had an exchange with a doctor. The doctor continued asking me my tribe, and I continued telling him that he to give me has no relevance with my tribe. The age I agree, so that I should not overdose or underdose. We kept arguing, not until I walked out of the hospital without medicine. I said, okay, if you are going to treat me because my tribe has anything to do with the medicine that I'm going to take, then I'm out of this. So what I'm trying to say is that for us to have a really comprehensive built a system that would ensure everybody is aware of things, like how Joy was saying, for people to acknowledge that it is normal. So that knowledge we are still lacking, and we have to give it as much as possible. And also to say that some of these situations, these are, I would say, some can be permanent but temporary situations. They should not manifest and they become a trail on you, like it is you everywhere you go you are stigmatized because of that. Otherwise, even those who may seem to be normal, not having any mental issues, they have them anyways. Like as I've said, everyone has issues. Then, of course, that comes with a nation that we have talked about. All these, we have to come out and then continue teaching our people, build systems, and so on. So once we do that, then it will be very normal that we can talk about it, and nobody is going to hold that against you. For sure, in developed countries, it is terrible. Like right now, I fear to walk out because of the incident that happened in black people were targeted and shot. Now I'm not sure whether I'm the next black person that is being targeted. So although now I move out, I move like a thief. If I'm going to the store, I go there, I first see people enter. That I do shopping very fast and I get out very fast. Even by the way, even if police sees me, can say, why is this person suspicious? But I'm like, am I the next person to be shot? So itself becomes a very big issue. So to me, I still insist that the best way to do it, most especially in Africa, is to talk about it extensively. Joy talked about men. That's true. Even me myself, there are things that I feel I can't go and just say. I say I will handle. Even sometimes when something pushes me, but I say this one I will handle. Maybe I should talk to somebody. I say no. How would a person feel that I'm going through this? This is something very easy. And little knowing, at some point you find yourself breaking down, or it hits you hard. So I agree that these conversations should be normal. And the only problem, Lynn, I have back home is that when this statistics comes out and nothing is being done, you find that they just talk about it. Okay, we have so many people. Like for example, if you say 14 million Ugandans have mental issues, shouldn't that worry the country that it could be a security threat? Wouldn't it worry that maybe once people have nothing to do, they can easily be mobilized? You know, the whole of mental illness is for you to get somebody to talk to, for you to get something positive to occupy you, or something to occupy you. Now, what if a person lands? Like I talked about the juvenile delinquents, I talked about the youth. Let us assume that somebody exploits that and then uses reverse psychology, and then it erupts into something that they may not handle. What would happen? So that's why I say that the government would be venturing into all this and say, okay, what do we need, than wasting a lot of money celebrating 48 years. That is unacceptable. Either, I'm sorry, let me put it categorically clear, either there is also some mental issue with the leadership that is abnormal, they okay it to be normal, and it is very dangerous. Thank you.
Francis. Oh, wow. Okay. So, yes, clearly everybody has a mental problem going on, but here we are. This is a good start. It's a good start for us to have this conversation, but I think we need to have more of this. I did Francis this month's theme. It got me thinking, have we reached a point as a nation to have this conversation really at a national level? Can our leaders, as you concluded, they might also have their own mental problems. Everybody does. But what do we need for it? Let's there. What do we need to have these conversations, not in our heads? It can't just be in our heads all the time. We've got to have these conversations as and when it is necessary. So what do we require? Let's start as you and I. You are in the I am here in Uganda. Uganda, we all have these problems. Where do we start from and how do we start? Joy already highlighted we have to have more of these conversations. Maybe stop telling ourselves we are African, we can handle these problems. Meanwhile, I need to let you know that Uganda is among the top 6 countries in Africa in rate of depression disorders, 4.6%, while 2.9 live with anxiety disorders. And now this is very bad. The females are at 5.1% higher than the men at 3.6%. And this is very, very worrying. We have started. How do we move? Do people know that there are services? Do people know that you can move? I can go to Francis and be like, you know what, Francis, I'm going through A, B, C, D, and Z. Need help. I'm going to start with you, Joy. As we find solutions, to these problems, not only in Uganda. Francis says all his problems start from Uganda. But now you're that side, Francis. I think it is about time of the problems that come with the fact that you're Ugandan. So let's start from there and find solutions to these problems.
Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you, Francis. You covered you covered most of the things, actually. You know, besides us talking about it and normalizing this conversation, so it is no longer a taboo. Because if we keep talking about something, it stops being a taboo because it becomes common knowledge. Let's have programs on the radio. Let's get the president to speak about it. You know, one of these Sundays. You know, talk about it on the TV, national television. You know. That's how we start, by talking about it. Then education, you know, schools. In the UK, it's actually part of the primary school syllabus where they talk about feelings. Name your feelings. It's normal to be sad. You know, these are the kind of things they tell our children, you know, in that module. They say it is okay to be sad and it's also okay to cry. And my daughter, she's just 10. And when she was about 8 years, she was telling me we are going to start about emotions. I was telling my husband, what am I going to tell these children? But when she came back, when we're talking about it, I really realized they had really talked quite a lot, that sometimes you'll feel like this. What do you do when you feel like that? Those are the kind of questions. Because here in the UK, we get children who are 10 years self-harming because they can't cope. You know, because they put a post on Instagram, you know, they have their chats as well, and nobody liked it. And so they are going to start self-harming. And then they can't eat, they can't sleep, and they're behind their school homework. So, you know, what they do, you know, in that curriculum, they talk about naming healing. Feel about that. How does it make you feel? And then about how you make other people feel. It's a cycle. And this is very important. It removes what my brother was saying, Francis, I shouldn't be celebrating other things when other people are having real issues, because you look at how other people feel. If you care about how other people feel, then I think the world becomes a better place. How are your actions affecting other people? And so in the UK, they're teaching these little children from primary school to talk about feelings and how you make other people feel and how you treat those people who are feeling like that. That, you know, because the question is like, what do you think you can do to make this person feel better? And they put something in the bubble. And we can think these are like being. Then, yes, you know, we have staff meeting, and the first part of that meeting is talk about feelings. And this is very important. So it is to reflect, you know, to make people think, stop and say, how am I feeling? It's a big thing. You know, I don't know about you, Francis. I know if you ask a man, how are you? They will say, I'm fine. But if you say, how are you feeling? They will stop and think. That's a big question. Say, how are you feeling? In fact, it makes you realize, was I just scared for nothing? Or was I minimizing something that is very important? And talking about these kinds of things of saying, we need to talk about how we feel, because how we feel affects our mental health. And get somebody who you can trust to ask you about your feelings. Then, of course, in churches need to introduce this kind of conversations where they don't just everything is just Holy Ghost fire. No, you need to talk about feelings and break things down. and normalize that somebody thought they were the only ones going through situations. Because when people are dressed up so smart in church, they think everybody who is very smart is going very well and things are working out very well for them. How will they see me if I tell them I haven't slept for the last 2 days? You know, we need to normalize this kind of conversations at every level of leadership, in school, in churches, at workplace, in our friendship. Have a little group of 3 or 4 where you meet up and say, how are you doing, man? And these are the kind of things that even like, whether you are in relationships or you are mothers, you know, you talk about, we have little groups of mothers. And in fact, when you go to social services, because you have some mental health challenges, they are going to recommend for you to go and join a small group where you can talk about things and other people are going to tell you how they have managed to overcome. For example, single mothers struggle quite a lot in this country because you need childcare and you can't get someone to look after children. You end up leaving the children by themselves in the house and the social workers come and take the children away from you and somebody feels like committing suicide because everything is just, like going just the other way. But when you open up and you get a little community, you get a few friends, you can help each other. So again, Lynn was asking, how are we going to address this? And I started by talking about it like this. Let the president talk about it on the national television. Let these bloggers on WhatsApp, or not WhatsApp, the bloggers on Facebook, and on radio, on TVs, talk about it. And when they talk about it, it becomes common knowledge. At workplace, push for it. Tell your manager. Tell them we need to talk about feelings. And this is how we are going to put this taboo behind us and normalize, situations of saying it's okay. What Francis said that, they shouldn't stigma, label you when you say I had a mental health breakdown last year and they think that has followed you all the way through. They need to understand everybody has mental health and it's that state, it's at that moment when you get a breakdown. It doesn't mean you're always going to be in that place. It is what have you got since then to show that actually you have built your resilience, since you got that breakdown. I think I'll stop there for now, Lynn.
Thank you, Joy, for bringing out that. I think we need to have a discussion a lot about the mental illness and make it feel normal. Talk about it, the social media, the mothers groups, and you reminded me that in African these networks where they actually helped people overcome such a moment, because there was like a support network and issues were handled in a close community. If you lost someone, you have people to talk to, you have the extended family, you have friends around you. With our modernization, we are losing such a networks. We no longer have time for those small discussions, but which are very important. And that's where we need the intervention of the professionals and the trained expertise who come in and fill those gaps. But Francis raised an issue which I felt I should comment on: racism and racial violence. Here in USA, that is very real. You don't know when it's coming for you. It could be at the workplace, it could be at school, at the mall, even on the road range. You don't know which person is gonna next and whether they will stop you with a bullet or just a siren. So those things are very, very real. Today is Saturday. I'm so scared about going to the grocery store. For real, like I'm just like, can I postpone this? Because recently there has been a scare in this area and there is a lot of scares going on apart from the incident which has already happened. There are notices all over about the gun violence and the racial groups swearing to attack the Blacks and other minority groups. And that is a very, very big challenge. But how do we handle this stress? I think we need to put up some mechanisms of how we can discuss this. Maybe a hotline at the embassy. Maybe there are not many enough non-profit organizations coming up to talk to immigrant communities. Okay, they are there like generally to the rest of the community, but the immigrant communities don't access like so many of the services. Joy, UK has so many services, social services to other people. USA is so different. Like if you don't have certain visas, if you are not like a permanent resident, you can access medical services. So that you have no access to, whether you need them and you are even aware that you need them, you cannot access them. You can't access medical services without insurance or without it pay out of your pocket. So you feel like you need to go to the hospital when you are really, really sick. So you try to put up the small incidences like stress, anxiety, so you can handle this because it's too expensive to deal with, even when you have the insurance. So those are the gaps that are real challenging around here and in USA. And I think since we have a big community of Ugandan immigrants in USA, I don't know if the embassy can put up like a mitigating measure, like say maybe a hotline where people can call for counselors. They could be non-profit or they could be part of the embassy staff. I don't know, but something to really, come up and cover that gap, because most immigrants, most Ugandans cannot even afford the available services. Yeah, everything is a lot of payment. You have to pay for this, you have to either insurance, also expensive. Even medical insurance is expensive, and there is no free service in America. So everything is for money. And that also worsens the issue. I wanted to also highlight Uganda, like we know so many people in Uganda go to churches. I think even if we know that the government cannot afford a lot of like medical services, say to everybody, like Francis said, they should be starting at the village level. But we all know we can't afford that. But the interventions, like Joy pointed out, could be the church, could be social bloggers, could be every other. Today we have a lot of circles for investment, but can those circles go beyond and talk about feelings and how people are feeling about the mental illness? Having a figure of 14 million, which is more than a quarter of the population being mentally sick, an emergency. That is a healthcare emergency. Because if you're mentally sick, how are you plan for the economy? How are you going to be economically productive? How are you going to be socially productive in the community? And it's so sad that the country, like Francis said, our leaders are not even thinking about it. The figures are going to be there. Researchers are going to put the figures in our face, but we are going to jump them and just focus on non-issues as usual. It's the MPs' salaries, the cars, who's driving convoy, and who is the birthday, nothing like. So who is going to talk about mental illness, and how are we going to mitigate that challenge? 14 million Ugandans we have. In Uganda, by the way, there is a big problem that young people access medical, like pharmacies, like harmful medical drugs, which they are not supposed to be accessing, which are supposed to be accessed by prescriptions, addictive drugs, but there is no control about it. Like a young person can go to the store and maybe even forge a prescription and access opiums, opiates, and whatever, and some of them even spill through into our groceries. The Bureau of Standards doesn't control everything. So we have a big problem of drug abuse and drug addiction among the youth, and nobody's talking about it. Even schools have a challenge how to deal with them, even if they know, how do they control such? And like Francis said, it's mostly the teachers who are in charge of behaviors in Uganda, but who is there to solve that problem, and who is even thinking about it, going on about it, about controlling the drug abuse and even providing intervention or counseling services to youth who could be addicted or who could be in the process of being addicted to such.
When you mentioned like when you talked about, young people going to pharmacies to get medicine. This morning, as I was driving, actually, I just heard on the news they've introduced a new UK. So they're trying to encourage people to get off medication for mental health, because they realized they were getting a generation of people who are on prescriptions. And then, as we all know, most of the time they don't know the long-term impact of these prescriptions. And then you become dependent. You're almost addicted. You feel like you will not sleep if you don't take the medicine. So now the UK is introducing this app. I'll share with you. Maybe I'll drop you an email, because it will be a free app anyway. So you can find information. Say, for example, you have sleeping disorder, eating disorder, or whatever, PTSD, all those things that can impact on your mental health. You have this app, and then you are able to look at how you're feeling and whatever. So they ask you like a range of questions to see, and they give you that information. And this information sometimes helps you to manage, because you realize actually there is an answer for this. Instead of now prescribing medicine, you decide to say, maybe I need to breathe better. Maybe I need to sleep early. Maybe I shouldn't take alcohol. Maybe I should talk to somebody instead of smoking. Because the things you resort to actually impact on your health long term. So like you said, somebody may be too stressed, they start with alcohol, then time comes when alcohol can no longer manage their stress, then they upgrade it maybe to some cannabis, and then that is not strong enough, then they go to cocaine, and before you realize the person is gone. So these are the kind of things that this app addresses. I'll share the app with you if you can, find ways of circulating it. But that you realize that actually when you go to a counselor, counselors don't rush to prescribe medication. They help you talk through whatever is going on, because sometimes changing the narrative, how you feel about yourself. Like when you talk about racism, I empathize with you guys in the US. We have racism in the UK, but it's a little bit covered. And this morning they were actually saying the police is going to use a new theme, which says the system is anti-racist. That's what they say, anti-racist. So they were discussing that why do they even have to mention that if they were not after all? But you see here in the UK, they try to cover up as much as they can. But in the US, especially, unfortunately, it's a little bit rough where, they will even shoot you just for being Black. That is really quite sad. But again, these are the kind of things, because you are not going to change who you are, and you are stuck in that situation. How are you going to manage to look after yourself and be safe, and at the same time flourish by going out and do the things, go window shopping, love to do window shopping? That is almost now changing your lifestyle as a woman, affecting your character, because you can no longer go out and just go for a walk in the park because you're just so worried who you're going to bump into, whether it's going to be a psychopath, racist. So all these things impact on even where you choose to live. For example, in the UK, we have areas which are very racist. And I'm telling you, if you're buying a property, you're going to have a family. You don't want to buy a property in those areas. So I get it, and I really empathize with you. But again, let's be the voice to talk about these things, how this whole situation is making you feel.
Thank you for so far what has been discussed. I've missed a couple of things, but the last time I checked, we were looking at solutions to these challenges we encounter day in, day out as human beings. Miriam, I don't know how far you've gone.
We were discussing the solutions, especially to social violence that we are experiencing, and in Uganda, like how do we talk about mental illness? How do we create like massive sensitization, even with the few resources we have? And we looked at integrating the mental health in school curriculum, social media, sharing wherever we can, and having discussions like this one. So we can add on to that. We were looking at how we can have a discussion back home, but the biggest challenge I see is, I don't know if you talk to Ugandans, like out of 10, how many do understand even mental illness? Even these social bloggers, how are they blog about subject they don't understand? How do we even create that initial awareness so that we have trainers of trainers, we have mentors of mentors, and counselors of other counselors to back to the grassroots? So we need government intervention, at least to create that foundation. Without a big intervention, we can't even have that conversation going on amongst us.
Miriam, that's very right. Talking about numbers, I think about 4 to 5 of youth I encounter on a daily. I beg your pardon, 10 of them, 10 of the youth I encounter, 5 of them are going through a major mental problem. And they won't notice that it is a big problem, but they will be like, I'm not fine. And I don't want to be in places I don't want to be. I want to just stay indoors. I want to be alone. I don't know what to do, but I don't want to be anywhere close to people. I think what you mentioned, blogs, people being aware about this mental issue. It's very interesting that this year's topic, another theme in Uganda, is calling for a conversation at the national level. But now this is a very good start. So I think the more we talk about it, the more we, and we also need to understand that mental disorders are different. They take on different forms of, first of all, different forms. There's different forms of treatment. There's different forms of approach. There's different feelings towards different, mental challenges we encounter. So for you people in the diaspora, I even feel so bad about it that it could be worse than what it looks like. So wherever you start with having these conversations, I think our embassies perhaps should have like a counselor on board. Like it is a thinking I have, and we ought to take these conversations to the people that matter. And
as Miriam was presenting, she brought in an important point about the embassy, that they could have a hotline, for example, to help us. I will always sound like I'm a person who is negative, but I'm trying to be objective. Most of these embassies, sometimes either because they are underfacilitated, sure they seem not to be helpful. I'll give you an example. Since we have had a conversation about how we can renew our passports using our embassies, I don't believe that you number of the embassy on Monday you call it 5 times. 5 times. On Wednesday, you increase and call it 10 times at the whole week, and nobody picks. Now, let us assume I was going through a stressful situation, or I'm under danger, and the only option is my embassy to save me. Do you think I can even ever put it on a speed dial, that in case I'm in danger, the first home that I have, the Ugandan home that I have, is embassy? So I think that they need to check out. Now, when it comes to, if they can't a serious issue like a passport, what about when I'm telling them I'm struggling? I'm not, they just say, oh, another Ugandan has run mad there. So, and so on. So I think we should begin with our structures, do our structures of government, and see challenge. Now that the statistics is coming out, how prepared are we? You still remember how COVID devastated a series of countries or health systems just because of lack of preparedness. already. The signal in Uganda came much earlier, Lynn. Let me be sincere. You still remember an incident where one of the army officials, an officer, traffic officer, that lady, wasn't that general, wasn't it already a signal of either lack of emotional intelligence or a mental issue that would immediately have started from there? Now see what has been unfolding since then, the recent one that happened. Let us assume if the police officers were also emotional and they exchange fire, do you know how many innocent people would die there? Is that the government should see this, but who to see it, I don't know. We can begin from. I know of situations where we have been talking over and over, but Lynn, I believe this time, this conversation, if we had brought somebody from government to listen to such a conversations, perhaps they would go and take this information and see. Trying sometimes to connect these dots, situations and scenarios that have happened in Uganda, situations and scenarios that are Singapore, and we blend them because we are trying to say, look here, regardless of where we are, we still remain or call ourselves as Ugandans. Whatever I'm going through, it is Uganda going through it. There are people who depend on me who are in Uganda. As I suffer, they also suffer. Then there are people in Uganda that I depend on also. As they suffer, I also suffer. Like right now, I am depending on Lynn because he's the moderator. As the network goes down and then we hang, I suffer because there is a problem that side. So if we look at it from a multifaceted kind of approach, then we are going to manage it. Joy talked about churches. Sometimes I have an issue with churches. Kyomugasho talked about it. We have to first build the bond of knowledge, people who are knowledgeable. I have seen where pastors, every issue, they are attacking it from a devil perspective. The devil, we cast it out in the name of Jesus. No, some of those things don't go like that. That you shout at them, how loud you shout at them, then they go. No, they need for sure the good. Since some of these church leaders show that they can help in as far as these are concerned, to have them taught, to have them know what are these different things and then how they can be of help. And they agree. Like you've seen, Lynn has talked about having 50% the youth you are talking to, and they are telling you they are going through or struggling, and some of the struggles you want to talk about them. That is very, very dangerous. Anything slight like this can ban Uganda. Now let us assume if we said that, okay, the 14 millions that have mental issues, let's say if they turn the other way, the degree reaches that they would qualify all of them to be in Butabika. How crazy would the whole country be? So some of these things, that's why we are saying the bond of knowledge as far, and I know there is, we have almost every university has the faculty of psychology, has the faculty of medicine, and so on and so forth. So the literature is there, but the problem is in Uganda we failed to put something into action. If it is research is there, so how do we turn it into action research? Or how do we turn it into actionable items and priorities? Like I would be very happy that the next time we are discussing about this issue, which is pertinent, it is very important that we bring in somebody from government so that they see from a perspective of how it can be a threat to security, how it can be a threat to development, how it can even taxation, they are saying they are increasing the tax base, how it can be even an effect to producing coffee that they want to give somebody to become a dominant person. If you have mental ill people produce the coffee that you want to give away anyway, or any other thing that you want to look at. So it is important that I believe the knowledge does exist, and I don't know whether Lynn, I think we can advise government as they in the parish model. I think it was Miriam who, and if you go and give, let's say, money or whatever going on in their mental whatever, that will collapse. And then you begin saying, why is it not working? Yes, the mental issues have not been addressed, and all these needs to and also I would insist, Lynn, we like it or not, the lifestyle of the people in administration itself. You see, you can't come and then you are coming to address me like the lifestyle of some of our ministers, our leaders. You are coming to address all on national television. You are talking about something, and then where for you are talking from a privileged point of view, I may not listen to you. It is like we have a saying back home that he who has sauce will tell those who don't have sauce that just go. And you know, it is very hard to swallow maybe a portion that has no sauce. It can't pass easily, but someone who has sauce will just say, it is just a matter of swallowing, swallow and we go. That's not the way how it works. For us to address these issues, we must all speak the same language, speak the same tone, regardless of the political divide, regardless of our tribes, regardless of where we come from, the area of the country, because this has no boundary. It is affecting everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis, for that session on mental wellness.
Lynn, you are breaking. We didn't hear you, but I think you were talking about how women are affected in all this. Yeah, that's a big problem. You know, women in our settings are like the anchors of the family and in extension, the anchors of the society. They are in charge of nurturing everybody from the husband to the children and then the extended relatives and everybody. But who takes care of the women's well-being? They take care of everybody, but they don't have anybody to look out for them. And that's a big like a big gap in the I don't remember like how many moments my mom would come up and say, hey, I'm not feeling okay, because she would be not feeling okay, but she can't even say it because we are all looking up as children. And my father is out working to also take care of the family. So who is going to take care of my mother when she's busy taking care of us, the children? And mothers in Africa are like that. And Joy talked about single mothers in diaspora. They are busy trying to make ends meet and also take care of the children. It is very taxing in diaspora. Taking care of kids when you are a single parent is not very, very easy. And then you have the system which is very strict on you. So how the straight a mother, you are a single mother, you are a caretaker. I think, like we pointed out earlier, there are so many groups and many more can be created, but the information, the mental health information needs to be incorporated in all our setups, whether it's the church, whether it's the a circle, economic savings circle, whether it's, I don't know how it is, but in my community, we have groups called Mweziche, you know, like groups, people come together, they and they work a funeral, but be sensitized to have an extension of counseling after grieving. is there someone, okay, you have provided food for them and you have helped them deal with the immediate mourning of their loss, but who is going to look up for them about the grieving after burial? So if someone can sensitize such a groups to have like an elder who's going to come back and visit the family, who's going to come back and talk to them, is there anybody taking care of the orphans or whatever the dependents that have been left behind? Or how are they dealing with the pain after the funeral rites? So such a things, even LOC1, we have LOC1 systems up to every village in Uganda. But do we have a counselor there, a social counselor, a social worker, someone who is trained? Because we know they are not, but they can be trained. Who can be trained? I know such a people are trained. Even when UPE was introduced, the LOC1 chairman were trained to go and look out for kids who are not going to school. But can they also be sensitized to look out for family members who are not doing okay mentally? Maybe they are going through addiction and they even don't know where to go for help. Maybe they have mental stress and anxiety and depression, and they don't know how to find services to help them with their problem. Or maybe they have a mentally child or children with special needs. You know, in Uganda and in Africa in general, children with special needs are looked at as an abomination, and they are locked up in homes. We have the stigma around mental sickness, that when a child is mentally sick and is in your family, parents even feel embarrassed to seek medical intervention for that child or even services for them. And there are no services for special needs children, even in our schools, even our healthcare in system. So those things need to be included. Maybe a health center, a health center for, so that parents have a way of addressing such a challenge. How back in my village in Obushenyi, deep there, how do you know that your baby is autistic? How do you know that he has learning disability? Can you deal with that? Who are you going to talk to? Is there even a center where that can be diagnosed? Is there anybody to cancel the parents? Is there with expensive services? There could be some sort of intervention, and we start from there. But all those things are lacking in the Uganda system, and as said, and they said, I mean, Lynn, it's the mother now who is going to the shaming. You know, when you have a mentally sick children, do you know how to act? Our in-laws can even chase you from the home. All that shaming goes to the father is, like you would say, in my, if everyone goes with the father is praised and complimented. When things are not going well with the mother is shamed and abused and stigmatized. And that includes the if you have a sick child in Uganda, who do you talk to? Are there such a services? We created UPE, but it doesn't have special needs section. Where do children with special needs go to? How do parents handle that? How do they teach them? They train them. If you have a sick child, which hospital do you go to? We saw that in Uganda we have only one mental special referral hospital in Tanka, which has 500 beds, and we have 40 million Ugandans, with 14 million Ugandans already in danger zone of having mental sickness. So where will the millions go? I say that's a national event that all of us need to think about. And the same in diaspora, even though the services like children's services and all that, we still have parents who still think like maybe they can be weak, and they send them back to Uganda for traditional healers work, exorcism and prayers and all that stuff, intervention. So the lack of awareness goes both ways. Even when in Uganda there are no services, but there is also stigma. But even in Ugandans in diaspora, even though there are services, there is a real lack of awareness about mental health. Another big issue is the women, they don't have the time even to think about it. Like, if you are sick, you know it, and you know that your child depends on you being well, you don't even entertain the idea that you are going to be mentally sick. So the fear keeps away seeking help. But who is going to help them? Don't know. The social networks can help talk to you, but who is going to relieve you of the burden of taking care of your family so that you take care of your health? I don't have an answer to that. Maybe just an idea. I don't.
All
Yeah,
right, thank
thank
you
you.
very much. I want us to wind up.
So thank you, Lynn. We are struggling with your network. Sorry about that. Yeah, you know, when you mentioned, who looks after the mother, we can actually, Miriam, we can look at a mom who has given birth and has no support network, is only having her nurse, her midwife with her. Can you imagine? And then we get a lot of postnatal depression. We get this quite a lot. And further, to have, postnatal depression with health visitors. When they discharge a mom, the health visitor has to keep an eye on them to see how they are coping. Most of the time, the focus is not actually on the mom, the focus is on the baby. Because if the health visitor comes and finds crying, baby is crying, and mom is crying because she can't cope, and of course, when mom is crying, usually baby is not going to breastfeed because the stress goes down to the baby as well. Or baby can just stop crying and it's just there. And then, of course, the health visitor is going to take this child. The child is a child in need. So the focus is going to be on the child, not the mom. When you said that, Miriam, it's actually happening even here in the UK, to moms, because they're not going to give you like some kind of respite to say, oh, let's take the child away for a weekend or get somebody to come in. Sometimes we advocate for that, to say, can somebody come in and help you, to show you what to do with this baby. But it's a real problem. But again, taking this problem back home in Uganda, what we're saying, we can be the voice. When they say we come out, so we get this exposure, knowledge, and experience, we need to be the voice and sell on these ideas and say the government needs to talk about it. Our president needs to talk about mental health. And somehow, if they do that, then it will reach home, where schools look out for those signals where, for example, Lily, you said that, out of the 10 young people you talk to, 5 of them are experiencing some form of depression. The schools need to be able to identify this kind of children when they're struggling. Why are they not coming out like youngsters do? And then they talk about things. Actually, just so passionate about this, but I think I'm going to be selling it over to whichever, influential people I know about now, to talk about mental health and how it can impact on the productivity. And also, as Francis said, this can, somebody can actually manipulate this person who is experiencing mental health and turn them even into a terrorist. And it's happening in the UK when young people are held up in their rooms because they are not getting out. They can easily be groomed either into drug dealers or even terrorists. And this is real. That's what I wanted to say, Lynn.
Right. Thank you very much. Francis, in your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Lynn, Miriam, and Joy. This was important for us to discuss. In my concluding remark, I would just say that Uganda needs to scale up when it comes to the issue of mental health. If currently the statistics is showing 14 millions, let me just say we only have one mental hospital in Uganda, that is Butabika. That will automatically show you how it is terrible and needs government to intervene. If you divide all the staff, including those who clean, they have about maybe 430 staff. If you divide that by the 14 million and you say maybe, you'll find that out of those 14 million, 430, you will find that every maybe 300 and something people, Ugandans, depend on one staff of Butabika, including the cleaner. So that itself will show you that how much the crisis is and what we need to do to solve it. And we need more to be trained. Uganda on strike, complaining about, so you can't go to those who are already also complaining and you think you get comprehensive services. So I would urge you that as we come in to talk about it openly, but government should improve and step up its structures to ensure that this problem is addressed with the urgency that it needs. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Francis. Miriam, over to you. Concluding remarks, and then we call it a weekend.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn, and thank you all the panelists, Joy, Francis. I think this is like an eye-opening discussion for all of us. I see we have some listeners attending that discussion. Thank you so much for attending. And we all need to be ambassadors, like Joy said. We need to spread the message everywhere where we feel we can have a space to talk about it. We need create awareness about mental wellness, mental health for all of us, wherever we are, including our social media spaces. Something came to my mind like now, you know, when you say something like not normal people go to the Tabika, like we stigmatize even seeking medical intervention when you are mentally sick. We take it as an abomination, like something, if you are mentally sick, you are not suitable even to be among the people. You are like something to be discarded. So even the language we use, we need to create sensitization up to the level which to destigmatize mental illness, we need all intervention, even the language we use around it. Why do we call mad people mad people? I don't know. Are they supposed to be called mad people? Is insanity a problem of the person who is a victim of it, or it's a problem of a society who have not taken care of them? And you know, the shocking thing, when you get mentally sick and you happen to find in the hands of police in Kampala, you are locked up with the prisoners who are criminals. You are taken as a criminal. Here you are a patient, but you are treated as a criminal. That's how our system works. So that is, I don't know at what level we really need to intervene, because it's like we everywhere, like Francis said, we need to scale up. We need to really have a real deep discussion about this at all levels. Our schools, our communities, our politicians, our churches, our medical practitioners, everybody, but also the services. We need, even though we don't have the facility, like in figures show that Uganda spends 8% of the GDP on medical care, and 1% of it goes to mental health. And almost that 1% goes to one referral hospital, which is Butabika. So what about the health centers for? If you are mentally sick and you are deep in your village, where do you go to seek the mental services, the mental health care, the person who's trained specifically to deal with that? So the interventions are needed at all stages, and our embassies, I don't know whether they can do. We keep calling upon our embassies, but I think we need more interventions. If our embassies can't do a much, maybe non-profit organizations need to come up and fill those gaps until our government wakes up, because this is very urgent and it's needed yesterday.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Let me quickly read what's in the chat room. Damian says, much appreciated. Jennifer says, thank you, dear members, for this wake-up call. Please kindly share discussion all the possible media. Yes, thank you very much for your time. I think, Miriam, we need to have a follow-up conversation where we can involve the relevant stakeholders, the medics, personnel from Ministry of Health. We need a multifaceted approach to have a more valid conversation, one that is really wholesome, to put people to account. And this is just not about us having this conversation, but continuously encouraging our leaders to evolve us to also come realize that mental illness, mental challenges is also a pandemic in its own. Impressed by a rich case study on what is on ground back home. Thank you very much, but we have to come to an end to conclude this show. I thank you very much. We shall, of course, have this more of these conversations, and make sure that our people get to know that it is not a crime for you to be depressed. It's not a crime to be sad. It is normal, and there are solutions. Civic Space TV is an online channel, and we have these conversations. Go to YouTube, Civic Space TV, go to Twitter, Civic Space TV, Facebook, and you'll find more of this conversation. But this particular one need a follow-up. And I wish you a very lovely weekend.